What is good, everyone? Jerry Trades here, back with another video. Today we're going to do class number 5 on my whole model and my whole series. This was supposed to be a Discord live class, but then my parents decided to go to Miami for Saturday, so I decided to record this so y'all can have something to study over the weekend, and for us, to continue, right? I know a lot of people are taking a break from trading during December, right? This last week, really. But I'm just going to pull up another video so y'all can understand, some more concepts. And let's just get into it. So this is class 5, understanding risk. This is basically when you put a stop loss or when you put money on the line, basically. And this is going to help people understand, what losses truly are, how to think about losses, and how to deal with them, right? So psychology, right? We hear all the time, trading psychology, right? So a lot of people think of risk as money I'm going to lose, right? I don't want to think about it like that. Think of risk as the cost of participation in the marketplace. So this is the amount of capital you are willing to lose to gain access to the marketplace, right? Think about it like an admissions ticket, right? You are willing to pay, 30 something bucks, 40 something bucks, 70 something bucks to, watch the game, right? And this is the cost of participation, right? So risk is not about being wrong, losing, a mistake, something to avoid. It is intentional exposure. Basically, what I want you guys to think about is this is a price I'm willing to pay in order to figure out if I'm right. That's how professional traders think about it. So risk brings out a lot of truth, right? It brings out a lot of solutions out, right? So with no risk, there's no invalidation, right? So every single trade is a hypothesis, right? You think price is going to move in a certain direction, right? It's not guaranteed, right? But based off of certain factors, right? Based off your model, you believe that because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever, price is going to move in a certain way, right? So, but the thing is that risk is your invalidation, right? Risk defines the line of where your hypothesis fails, right? So if you think about a stop loss, right? If you're watching my model, you understand that we put our stop losses below protected swings or somewhere near that, right? And why do we put them on protected swings? Because if we are bullish, those lows should not be detected. If we are bearish, those highs should not be touched, right? And if they are touched, we can obviously say like, oh, we're probably no longer bearish, or oh, we probably got in the wrong time. That's where the hypothesis of my trade, right? Me thinking that price is going to go up or down fails, right? And you do need risk, right? You never know when you're wrong. So if you just accept that you're going to be wrong at times, that's going to be fine, right? Because it's perfectly fine for you to be wrong. That's something you have to understand, right? I'm wrong. Everyone's wrong. Everyone's human, right? We all make mistakes. But if you never know where you're wrong, you're gonna bleed out, right? So if you're not defining risk, you never know where you're wrong, and then you're gonna start managing emotions, right? That's where you start to, panic, right? Because if you see anyone who just started trading and they're losing money, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm losing all this money, right? Because they're not defining their risk and they're not willing to accept that they're wrong, right? And if they knew they were wrong, they're just going to cut the trade, right? But they're praying that, they're actually right. So it's also confirmation, right? It tells us if our bias is wrong, right? If we get stopped out on a protected swing, right? Let's say we have a daily profile and we decide to trade the continuation of the daily profile and we got stopped out, right? That could be our bias was wrong. Timing can be wrong, right? Because sometimes your idea will be right, but it's just not the right time, or your context is wrong. So maybe you didn't really read price action correctly, or something like that. So good losses equals profitability. So what I mean by good losses is losses that you are willing to accept, ones that you know that if they are hit, I understand I was wrong, and those are part of my model, right? You got to understand that stop losses are part of your model. So a bad system has no losses. So if your system had no losses, no variance, and no drawdown, that would not be a real system, right? Because that's just not possible, right? That's just not possible. So a loss does not mean that you're a bad trader or a broken model. It's just that one trade that you have, right? It is statistically impossible for you to always be right, right? Because there's a million different factors that affects the financial markets. There's news, there's algorithmic ideas, Trump tweets at like some random time, and price dumps, right? So real probability demands losing outcomes, right? For you to be profitable in the long term, you will have to lose, right? And that's anything. To get good at anything, you will have to make mistakes, right? Like in school, right? Are you always going to get 100 on tests? No, right? Because you're still learning, right? Every single quiz that you have, every single test that you have, you would still get some stuff wrong, right? And if you get a good grade, like a 96, you still got stuff wrong, right? So that just kind of shows that and statistics, you're never going to be 100% right. And then it also protects you, because with winning streaks, right? We all love winning streaks, right? But then the thing is that there's a very big psychological thing behind it where they create false confidence, right? So I know everyone knows the story, well, kind of the canon, I guess, of new traders. They get crazy winning streaks, right? Because when I first started, I started hitting wins like crazy, but then I started losing a lot, and that definitely hurt my confidence. So just understand that good losses, right? You accept good losses, like, okay, I got stopped out. I was wrong, right? So I'm going to look for the next opportunity. So drawdown will happen. So drawdown is basically you're stuck in a situation where there's not enough money, right? You're stuck in a position where you're losing money, right? You're down like $600 on the eval, or you're down like $700 on live, whatever, right? So drawdown will always happen, right? You will be stuck in drawdown. That's just how the market works, right? And if you can't handle drawdown, you can't handle trading. It's that simple, right? So if you're not willing to understand drawdown, just don't trade. I'm sorry. The market is designed to shake weak hands. So the market will test you in many different ways. Sometimes your buys will be wrong and you'll be like, oh my gosh, why is my buys wrong? I did everything right. And that's just, and then you lose, right? But sometimes the market will move that way, right? And this is where it's key. Most quitters quit mentally during drawdown. So I know a lot of people who lose a little bit on evals, right? They're like, oh my gosh, I lost $300 on this eval. I might as well just full port it, right? And that leads to blown accounts, right? Now, drawdown forces you to stay mechanical. It forces you to respect risk, and it forces consistency. So in order for you to get out of drawdown, you don't, if you see any traders that get out of drawdown, it's them, following their model, de-risking, right? Being more confident, right? They don't panic, because the second that they panic, the account's gone, basically. Now, if drawdown feels unbearable, right? There's really 3 reasons. 1, your risk is too large. So if you're risking like $500 a trade when you only have like a $1,500 drawdown, like what are you doing, right? Because one losing trade, and you're down 500, right? And then 2, your expectations are wrong. So that can mean a lot of things. 1, once again, your risk is too large, right? You expect to pass this eval in like a few trades, or like 1 or 2 trades, right? And sometimes you target too high, right? You're not taking your profits, and that's something else that could be wrong, So expectations, right? Set realistic expectations for yourself. Okay, I'm going to go for a 1 to 2 R. I'm going to take partials here, yada, 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 right? And then psychology is immature. So this is why I'm trying to help you. Correct risk makes drawdown boring, manageable, and survivable, right? So if you're risking, let's say on a 1,500 eval, you have 1,500 drawdown. If you're losing maybe like $100 every trade, right? You get like 15 losing trades. And if you can't get a winning trade and 15 losing trades, it's very unlikely, right? So if drawdown causes panic, you're either oversized or you're just not ready for the live markets, right? Win rate isn't relevant. Now, this is a little misleading. I can understand that. But you got to understand that you can't be focusing too much on your win rate. So asymmetry is when we're risking small fixed amounts to access a large variable move, right? So what you got to understand is that we're not looking for a win rate, right? We're not trying to target a specific win rate. That's why I hate YouTube subtitles are like, oh, do the strategy for 70% win rate. That's not how you want to think about things, right? You want to think about your losers being controlled, right? You want to have consistent, easy to survive losers, and you want to have winners that are not capped, right? So if you're risking 100, you can make like 300, right? 1 to 3, right? You're not trying to be right often. A lot of traders are like thinking like that, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I have to be right. Market must go up, right? You're trying to get paid big when you're right. That's the main thing, right? You want to capitalize on your opportunities when you are right. And then when you're wrong, you want to, keep it as small as possible. So I use R multiples. So what is R? R is your pre-dying risk. So if you risk 100 on a trade, that's 1 R is $100. So very common, very easy risk reward. And I use R instead of cash, dollars, right? Because accounts grow, position size changes, consistency must remain. You want to think in risk, right? You don't want to think in cash, because cash gives you a bad psychological profile, right? If you think about risk, you're like, oh, I got a 1, 2, 3 risk reward. Oh, that's really good. And then versus, oh, I made $1,000. There's a very big difference between that, right? So final takeaway, right? You are not getting paid for accuracy, emotions, or intelligence, right? It doesn't matter if, it doesn't matter really how you're trading, right? You're getting paid for controlling risk, right? Because you're losing less. discipline, right, to cut your losers short, and for you to be patient, right, to let your winners run. So basically my 5 kind of things, right, is risk is the entry fee, right? You're willing to risk to enter the marketplace. With no risk, you can't enter the marketplace. 2, losses are tuition, right? You're willing, so whenever in, a hypothesis, if your hypothesis is wrong, that doesn't mean there's no value in that hypothesis, right? If that tells you that, okay, this is not the problem or this is not the solution, right? This is another learning opportunity, right? So if you get stopped out, right, what did you do wrong? Maybe your bias is wrong, maybe your context is wrong, maybe your timing was off. Maybe, it reinforces the idea that you're right still. Asymmetry is the edge, right? If you can let your winners run, you'll make a lot of money. You'll get high RR even with the lower win rate. Liquidity is the target. That's very simple. And then time is the multiplier, right? Time allows price to move. So this is something else. Not really something else. This is additional things, target and stop losses, right? So targets, price only targets 2 things. 1, liquidity, right? Liquidity are people's stop losses, right? For every loser, there must be a winner, and for every winner, there must be a loser. And winners capitalize on market moves, right? Imbalances, not all orders get filled well. Price moves too fast for everyone to get a fair chance. So that's your fair value gaps, and that's your swing high, swing lows, previous day high, previous day low, previous session high, previous session low, all that stuff, right? Imbalances, key idea, higher time frame imbalance is often a lower time frame high or low. So I usually target SIBIs or BISTs on the 5-minute or higher. I usually just look for price to fill it, just to come up to it. Price does not need to fill the whole thing, right? And then liquidity is just classic market maker models and everything we've been talking about the last couple of days. So stop losses, right? I talked about this in the last class. This is just kind of a review of everything. So protect the swing, bodies of candles, 2 of the most important, and then 50% of any PD array. Just understand that if we're truly bullish or bearish, we should respect 50% of either the order block or the fair value gap. So that's it. You have learned everything in my model, right? So just to tell you guys what to do next, backtest, right? Get in reps, develop the intuition, and be able to spot your model quickly, right? It doesn't have to be my model. It can be someone else's model. It can be your own model, right? But you got to get those reps to be able to read them in live markets, right? I highly recommend TradeZilla because TradeZilla has the feature where it prints like actual real life candles. Forward test, right? Getting used to seeing candles print in real time. So that's when you're actually going to actual live markets every single day at 9:30 and you're actually trading. And then get funded, which is evals, all that stuff. Get actual capital to trade with once you feel like you're truly ready, right? So that's it. That's basically my whole model. I'm going to spend the weekend kind of brainstorming on some ideas what I can do over winter break. So it really depends on what we're going to do. But keep an eye out for any announcements I make. So once again, just want to thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.